Kaleb Johnson is a big between the tackles runner who is wildly productive in his final season at Iowa. He wins with power and strength, but also has the burst to create long runs. He checks a ton of boxes that we look for in a running back prospect and is in position to be a workhorse in the NFL as soon as the 2025 season. But before we dig too deep into the Kaleb Johnson scouting report, let's take a closer look at his journey. Kaleb Johnson hails from Hamilton, Ohio, where he starred in football, basketball, and track. He was a 3-star recruit in the class of 2022 after earning first-team All-State following a 1,000-yard, 15-touchdown senior season. A number of schools were knocking on his door, including Michigan, Michigan State, Miami, Pitt, Kentucky, West Virginia, and others. He received a total of 17 offers, originally committing to Cal before opting for Iowa. Kaleb Johnson started 6 games in 2022, rushing for its school freshman record 779 yards and scoring 6 touchdowns. At season's end, Kaleb Johnson was named All Big Ten honorable mention. He continued to operate in a shared backfield in 2023, starting 5 of his 10 games played on his way to 488 total yards and 3 scores. It was kind of a disappointing sophomore season, highlighted by a high ankle sprain that cost him 3 games. But when Johnson returned healthy in 2024, he took his game to a whole new level. He hit career highs across the board with 1,537 rushing yards and 21 touchdowns on 240 carries. He added 22 receptions, 188 yards, and 2 more scores as a receiver. That was enough to earn first-team All-Big Ten and Big Ten Running Back of the Year. Johnson leaves Iowa as the team's 6th all-time leading rusher and one of the top running backs in the 2025 NFL draft class. He's 21 years old and he's listed at 6 feet, 225 pounds. But let's talk about the positives, the things that we like in Kaleb Johnson's profile. And the first has to be that size, 6 feet, 225. Nobody wants to try to tackle this guy in the open field. He's got great vision, and he pairs that well with patience to help find that open lane and work his way to the next level. And he might not be the fastest guy, but he gets up to his top speed very quickly. He's got great acceleration. He's got good contact balance. He's a decisive runner. Once he finds that open lane, he does not hesitate to shoot through it and go. Don't confuse patience with hesitation or indecision. He's very decisive and patient. Got that great vision. We gotta love that. And while Kaleb Johnson isn't the most dynamic receiver out of the backfield, he didn't have the greatest receiving profile at Iowa, he does have good hands. He can be at least a reliable check down option for his quarterback. He's also good in pass protection. He's going to make a case for himself to be on the field in passing situations because he can protect his quarterback. He's a guy that coaches and quarterbacks can trust. And of course, with that big 6 feet, 225 pound frame, he puts that to good use and finishes strong on every single run. He's going to push forward. He's going to grind out every yard that he can get. On the negative side, Kaleb Johnson doesn't have that true breakaway speed. He's fast enough, but he's not home run hitting fast. He also has a limited route tree out of the backfield. He'll run some simple stuff, but he'll leave the more extensive routes to another running back. And we saw that in his receiving production, very underwhelming receiving production during his time at Iowa. And actually, speaking of production, he gave us just 1 year of high-end production, period. Those first 2 years were pretty underwhelming. He was sharing a backfield, but of course he made up for that with a big-time junior year. But archetype Kaleb Johnson is a grinder. He's a between the tackles guy. Going to use that size, going to use that power. Not super dynamic, not super explosive. He's going to grind out yards. And that's a lot like Commanders running back Brian Robinson Jr. We just had a little mini breakout year from Brian Robinson Jr. I think Kaleb Johnson could actually be more productive than Brian Robinson in the NFL. But their play style, their body types are very, very similar. They run hard, they finish harder. They're not a zero in the passing game. Big-bodied backs, excellent at the goal line. And for draft projection, I expect Kaleb Johnson is going to come off the board in the 2nd round. He could get as high as the 2nd running back off the board, but he'll definitely be one of the top 5 running backs drafted in this class. I think that'll happen sometime mid to late 2nd round for Kaleb Johnson. And diving a little bit deeper into the numbers for Kaleb Johnson, he checks boxes across the board. We would have loved to have seen more production early in his career, but that aside, Kaleb Johnson checks boxes. 2.27 yards per team play. That is beyond elite. The elite threshold that I'm looking for that number is about 1.9. That number is well in the rearview mirror for Kaleb Johnson. We talked about his overall raw receiving numbers were underwhelming at Iowa, but in 2024, his reception share in that offense was actually elite. 13.5% reception share for Kaleb Johnson. That's a really, really good number. I want these guys to be about 11, 12%. He goes over the top of that. And while he might not be the most dynamic receiver, this also is an indication that one, he can catch passes, but it's also two, that he's just a really good player. And coaches have identified that. And they were like, let's get him the ball in the passing game as well as the running game. They just want to get the ball in his hands in some way. And maybe the best number of all is his 57.5% touchdown share in 2024. That is an absolutely insane number. That means he accounted for nearly 60% of the offensive touchdowns scored in the Iowa offense last season. That is incredible. That means he's a big, big part of that offense. Huge part of their plan in the red zone. Just a really talented player. The bottom line is Kaleb Johnson is a big running back who wins with size, great vision, and contact balance. He is patient enough behind the line of scrimmage to let his blocks unfold while being decisive enough to hit the open lane when it becomes available. And at that point, he bursts through the hole into the second level with impressive acceleration and explosion. And once into the open field with a head of steam, Kaleb Johnson is difficult to bring down with one tackler. He uses his size and strength to power through arm tackles with ease, always finishing runs moving forward. Kaleb Johnson was fun to watch behind that exceptional offensive line at Iowa. He was so in sync with the blocking scheme, and he seemed to consistently break through for chunk gains. And of course, it's no surprise that Kaleb Johnson is reliable in short yardage situations as well. His strength, power, and leg drive allow him to push the pile and gain the necessary yardage to convert at an impressive rate. And looking at his final college season, Kaleb Johnson was a big-time producer in 2024. He checked all of the production-based boxes, and he proved he is more than capable of handling a heavy workload. In fact, I am confident he can manage far beyond the 262 touches he received as a junior. Now, where Johnson lacks is in his ability to run away from defenders in the open field. Don't get me wrong. He is good for plenty of big gains, but after the initial burst of speed through the line, Kaleb Johnson is missing that next gear to finish the job. Instead, he is often caught from behind, short of the end zone. In the passing game, Kaleb Johnson is a serviceable receiver out of the backfield. He has good hands, but he was used as more of a reliable check-down option than an active weapon. His route tree was extremely limited in the Iowa offense and unlikely to expand a great deal at the NFL level. With that said, though, Kaleb Johnson projects as a workhorse running back in the league. He will be the thunder to a running mate's lightning. He will run with efficiency between the tackles and be the go-to option in short yardage and goal line situations. Johnson won't be a guy who dances behind the line of scrimmage or tries to bounce too many runs outside. He will instead run with the scheme, follow his blockers, choose the correct lane, and finish the runs with power. NFL teams are going to appreciate his experience in a pro-style rushing scheme. He's going to especially draw the interest of offenses that utilize a lot of zone concepts where he can maximize his combination of vision, balance, and power. He's going to be a plug-and-play, day-one starter ready to carry the load. Kaleb Johnson will likely hear his name called sometime in the second round of the NFL draft. And in Dynasty, he's in conversation to be as high as the number 2 running back in the class. Draft capital and landing spot will certainly play a factor, but Kaleb Johnson is looking like a surefire first-round pick in rookie drafts. But here's the deal. You don't have to wait until your rookie drafts to get this guy. You can draft all of your favorite rookies right now against real people on Fast Draft. And the drafts only take about 5 minutes. No, seriously, 5 minutes. Jump into their rookie-only tournament. It's called Origins, where you can even get a head start on 2025 best ball. Visit draftfaster.com for more information or just download the Fast Draft app. And when you do, make sure you sign up using promo code YARDSPER and they will double your first deposit up to $25. That's promo code YARDSPER on Fast Draft. Let's get it.